Hello, Laquana. How are you? All right, you guys, come on in. I see we have a few of you all on the live right now. You are in for a treat. I am really excited about this finale night of the online series. Also, if you could just share the broadcast for us, please. And as you are coming in, if you want to comment your city and state, we'd appreciate that. We're going to be doing a poll at the end of this. So for those of you who have been logging on and participating during the previous nights and you've been gathering information, we would love to hear from you on how it was helpful, to your daily life. So you guys are in for a treat. As I said, whenever you come in, just share the broadcast, tag somebody in it. Really excited about this evening. So we're just going to give a few more minutes, allowing more people to log on, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, Tyrone. How are you? All right. Okay. All right. So if you have been, tuning in on the previous nights, then you know what this finale is all about. You know exactly what we're going to get into, what we're going to discuss. You are now tuning into the Get Out online series of The Power of the Mind in Media. And the whole purpose of this online series was just to kind of bring awareness to inform you all how powerful your mind is. Because as I have been stating, I don't think we have any idea whatsoever. In our understanding, I believe, what we think it is very minimal. So we've been breaking this down, each night to, help you all better understand the power that you have and how you can apply it to your daily life. All right. And not just that, but also the media and how they can use their power to impact your mind and your behavior in the same way. Because so many of us are allowing it to affect us and we have no idea. You know, so many of us are walking around in an unconscious state, in a sleep state, and we have no idea how, you know, things that we see, things that we hear, the things that we read, and how they are affecting us. So that is the whole purpose of this online series. And honestly, you know, 3 days really isn't enough to break down, you know, this extensive amount of information and knowledge. However, we're just wanting to offer a taste of it to you guys, just to, again, just to enlighten your awareness just a bit. So I have with me tonight Dr. Rick Wallace. He is a doctor of philosophy and psychology. He is also the founder and CEO and Chief Neuro-Associative Conditioning Specialist at the Visionetics Institute. As the founder and CEO of the Visionetics Institute, Dr. Wallace employs a wide range of disciplines, including psycho-cybernetics, neuro-linguistic programming, psychology, neuro-associative conditioning, embodied cognitive conditioning, and transformational vocabulary to help people raise the level of their performance in every area of their lives, including finance, marriage, business, parenting, and more. So this guy knows what he is talking about, all right? And that's why he's here, to basically just break everything down specifically so that you guys know how all of this works. If you have any questions, we will answer those for you at the end of the broadcast. So as we are speaking, if something comes up, just put it in the comment section. We might not acknowledge it right then as we are speaking, but we do see it and we will address it at the end of the broadcast so that no one thinks they are being overlooked. However, to get started, Doc, is there anything you want to say? Are you ready to just go in?
No, we can just go ahead and get started. I do thank you for inviting me. As I told you when you brought this to me and you asked me to participate, one of the things that I shared with you is that 4 days isn't enough. You really and truly understand the dynamic of how the mind and the brain work together and how information influences how the brain performs and how the mind perceives and the manner in which information is used to do that. It's amazing. And I've had the opportunity to work on both sides of the spectrum. Working in the Black community, I get to see often the negative side of how this works. And being the founder of and CEO of the Visionetics Institute, where I work with people to help them overcome many limiting beliefs, limiting ideas, erroneous thinking, and all of the other things that come along with it. Just being in the wrong mental state, wrong mindset, using wrong paradigms, all of those things that play a role. I have the capacity to help people do things that they never thought possible, and a lot of other people still think are impossible, because we address it at the core and we work and we rebuild and we basically rewire the neurological map of the brain to think differently. And we'll talk about that as we move forward. But yeah, I'm excited about being here. Like I said, we really don't have the time to give it the justice it deserves, but I think this is a conversation that has to be engaged and taken on, and I'll do the best I can in the time frame that we have to bring some type of illumination to the topic.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so let's just, first question, exactly how does the mind work on the psychological, physiological, and neurological level?
Okay, the psychological level, we're talking about more of the immaterial process that controls thinking, which is the mind. That's immaterial. It's something that exists within what we would call the soul. So you have the mind, and then you have the brain. The brain is the neurological, biological mechanism through which the mind manages information and uses it as a mechanism. If I had to simplify it and create an analogy, I would say that the brain is the greatest supercomputer on the earth, having the ability to process 400 billion bits of information per second. Then I would say that the mind is the user. And depending on what the user wants to download or upload into the computer is going to determine how the computer performs. Also, what the mind is seeking and searching for, the computer will definitely find. And so the computer knows what to find by a number of different things. Number one, the thing you engage the most automatically gains significance. You never have to say, I like it. You can actually engage and talk about something you don't like. One of the things I teach my clients is, if you don't want poverty, if you don't want lack, if you don't want to be struggling financially, stop talking about it, because your brain can't distinguish that you don't like it that you do like it. It just knows you constantly talk about it. And so lack and the mentality that goes along with lack is constantly being reinforced. When you talk about lack, your brain will actually go out and find all the reasons why you lack. And it will convince you, if you consistently see this information, that's just who you are, and that's what you're going to always have. You can change the program by changing what you focus on, and your brain will go out and actually find what it is you've changed to, because that's the emphasis you're giving it. And the process, the neurological process that causes this, is the RAS, or the reticular activating system, which is a bundle of nerves and neurons that sit at the base of the skull and at the top of the spine. And it literally serves as the filter for the information. Remember, I said that the non-conscious brain has the ability to process 400 billion bits of information per second. Well, the conscious mind, the part of you that's aware and making conscious decision and paying attention to what I'm saying right now, can only process a maximum of 1,000 bits of information per second. Imagine if your brain had to process everything that's happening right now all around you that you're not even giving attention. It's a clock that is ticking. It's a light that's on. Somebody's running water. All these things are doing that you'll be able to tune out and focus on something, and you do it consistently, because the reticular activating system filters all that stuff out and says that's not important right now. Even things that may be important to you at one time, the reticular activating system knows when it's important and when it's not. You pull up to, have you ever, and what happens is, the non-conscious brain, which is what controls 85 to 90% of all of your behavior. Most of your behavior is behavior that has been trained and learned and become habitual. Most of the things you do, we talked about this the other day, most of the things you do without even thinking. When you first start out and you learn to walk, it's a challenge, as a baby, trying to get your balance. I mean, you watch babies learn how to walk. They fall, they get up, they fall. And then they use their hands. They got their hands up and they're trying to balance, and they're doing all of this. And then you get to a point to where they walk a little better. And, when you and I get up now and we go to the kitchen, we don't even think about the fact that we are balancing ourselves to get there. It just automatically happens. Your brain does that, and it does it with so many different behaviors. But it's all based on what's being fed to it. So if you consistently feed your brain bad information, your brain will set up paradigms, your brain will set up patterns and behaviors based on the information you're feeding it. And it will create behaviors that you don't even know you're doing, and you will reinforce them, because the behaviors also come from neurological receptors that store memories that have been interpreted into beliefs. And these beliefs become paradigms. So the lens through which you see life is going to be based on the information you feed yourself and the experiences that come with it. And you will consistently make decisions based on that. That's why you have people that come from poor backgrounds making poor decisions, because those backgrounds shaped the information that they received, and that information turned around and shaped their behavior. And it's more complicated than that, but ultimately what goes in your gates will impact your behavior. And what I would want to share real briefly is that a common misconception is that because I know it's not real, it's not going to have an impact on me. Well, the problem is the brain cannot distinguish between what's real and what's not. It's been proven that one of the most powerful forces in mental control and human behavior is your imagination. The reason some people can create these unbelievable lifestyles is because they have the capacity to consistently live inside of these visions that they create of what they want. And and that's what I help people do, is create these crystal clear visions that are so clear that you can smell it, you can taste it. And that's a part of life experiences. People who are traumatized, when they go through traumatic memory, when they're having an episode, they're literally reliving that moment in a highly sensory way. They are smelling what they smelled at the moment. They are feeling whatever they felt at the moment. They're hearing whatever they heard at the moment. They're seeing whatever they saw at the moment. They are literally there again, reliving it. That's what happens with people with PTSD and complex trauma. They are literally reliving an event, and they're not where you think they are. You see them, but they're back wherever that event happened. And then until you deal with that, until you deal with those traumatic memories, until you recondition the mind to cope with it, to reprocess it. And this is how the mind initially processed it, that made it a problem in the first place. The meaning that was given to it, how it was viewed, especially we know now that there are a number of influences that increase the probability of becoming traumatized. One of the leading factors to raising the risk of being traumatized. The reason some people can go through it and some people, a bunch of people can go through it. Some people will not be traumatized. It's like, no big deal. I got through it. I'm okay. And some people will be traumatized, to a point that they're completely dysfunctional. Is number one, if you have a feeling of being helpless, if you were not able to participate in overcoming that moment, whatever that event is, whether it was 9/11, whether it was being molested or raped, whether it was being robbed, whether it was in a car accident where the car flipped, if there's some kind of way you were able to participate in surviving it, then you have a less chance of feeling traumatized because you didn't feel helpless. The sense of feeling helpless contributes to traumatization. There are also genetic factors, and I've written a number of papers on that, where epigenetics plays a role in increasing your proclivity to become traumatized by traumatic events. But all in all, we have to understand that there's no such thing as inconsequential information that enters the gates of our mind.
Okay. And I think something that I want to add is provide another example of what you said in terms of the imaginations, of an experience and how you're literally there. And I've shared it before on previous nights. It's a real scene of what he just said and what he just described is the scene in Get Out, for those of you who have seen the movie, when the gentleman was sitting at the end of the table and his mind literally imagined that past experience that happened when he was a little child sitting in front of the television, and he felt it. He was literally there all over again, to the point that we saw tears coming from your eyes. So that's just how powerful, the imaginations and everything is, especially when it comes to trying to, manifest and bring, certain things, to appear, to present, is using the power of your imagination. And I think something that's very important when it comes to imagination is, when we think of that, maybe we as adults now, we think that it is something that is kiddish or childish, to the point that we really don't use our imaginations anymore, right? We think that that's something that, you only do when you're a kid. But here's something that I would encourage parents to do, is encourage the use of your child's imaginations while they are young, all right? So it's something that they always do growing up, even into adulthood. If it's something that they want to be, encourage that imagination, encourage them to envision that, encourage them to, feel that, so that that's a principle that they are applying to their lives, at a young age and into adulthood. All right, so Rick, here's a question that I have. How easy is it to change your mind or change the way that you have been conditioned to think, or to have a certain outlook? How easy is it to change your outlook on something when you've been conditioned to think a certain way? Is it a difficult process?
The process is actually simple. It's difficult in the sense that you actually are conditioned by the very nature of being conditioned. You're also conditioned to guard against change. So that's why you find people who have certain beliefs, it's hard to get them off of their beliefs because they've become dogmatic about those beliefs, and their immediate reaction to any opposing information or any opposing facts that challenge their current belief system, their current paradigms, is to immediately dismiss it and get away from it, which is exactly how you avoid being conditioned in the first place. But we're all conditioned in a certain way, but you want to be conditioned in a way that you've chosen that puts you in the best position to have the most power to control your own destiny. Well, what happens in a situation where you're going in and someone has been controlled, like Carter G. Woodson says, when you're able to control what a person thinks and how they see themselves, when they immediately within themselves have been conditioned to believe they're inferior, you don't have to tell them how to behave. It's already comes as a part of the belief. The behavior comes as a part of the belief. If I can control how you feel about yourself, I was making this statement, and I was speaking somewhere else a couple of days ago, and the question came up about a certain person who's on the internet that's always talking and under the guise of uplifting women, but they do it in a way that they also attack men. And I was saying that when you truly are uplifting a person, you're helping them heal. You're helping them develop a sense of who they are, a sense of self-worth, an idea. And the thing is, when you truly uplift a person, well, and the argument was, well, he's only telling them what not to accept and what not. Well, the thing is, when I truly uplift you, when I truly introduce you to the healing process, when you truly become aware of who you are, I don't have to tell you what not to accept. It will automatically be there because it's who you are. So whether it's a good or bad, the conditioned mind is going to tell you your behavior. Well, the problem with changing the conditioned mind is that people are going to not naturally resist it. They're going to argue with it. It's hard to convince somebody that they have a conditioned mind because no one wants to believe that they're weak. And the idea of being conditioned says I'm weak. No, it's not a part of weakness. It's a part of consistency and persistence in a particular information. It's the establishment of an idea through consistent and information that can come in a number of different varied ways. It can come as a subliminal suggestion, which isn't anywhere close to being direct. It can be subtle, or it can be extremely direct or emphatic. And it can come straight out and say blacks are inferior to whites, or it can come out and it can show a commercial where when a woman wants to better herself by using a certain product, she takes her shirt off. She was black when she took the shirt off, but she's white now that she's used this product. It says that you're progressing from bad to worse. Well, it automatically sends a subliminal message that in and of itself will not be enough to condition a mind. But if you've been fed different pieces of information over time that all make that suggestion in different ways, it establishes that premise. There's a reason why there's an inferiority complex among African Americans. There's a reason why there's a high level of self-hatred among African Americans. It's because they've been consistently bombarded with the idea that the Eurocentric appearance is more beautiful, that white people are more smart, that white people are, better in all different types of ways. And none of it has to be true because it's not about truth, it's about perception. Perception becomes the reality. And so if I wanted to help someone change, if in the ideal situation, this is how easy it would be. 30 days of changing the focus of the information that's coming in. Bring in information that is diametrically opposed to the current idea or the current paradigm, something that challenges the current paradigm consistently every day, throughout the day, consistently, whether It's subtle, whether it's in the background, whether it's something where they're directly engaging it. And if it's something they want to change, then you want their direct participation. You want them repeating it over and over again, saying it to themselves over and again. You want it listening to it on tape, seeing it on video, and anything to offset the information and the different mediums through which the information is coming from. You do that over a course of 30 days. Some people say as short as 21. I work with my clients. We go through a 30-day process of reshaping, reconditioning, remapping the neurological receptors to take on new ideas, new beliefs, because those limiting beliefs that they have attached to these conditioned ideas are what's holding them back. A lot of people are trapped by their mind. It's been said numerous times that I don't have to put shackles on you if I can enslave your mind. And you make a better slave when I can use you and know that no matter how much physical freedom I give you, if I've enslaved your mind, you're going to work on my behalf. Matter of fact, you will fight fiercely for my interests without ever even being aware of it, because I've set it up that way. And so that's the thing that we have to do. If I wanted to help someone change, it's not easy, because you go through this process known as cognitive dissonance. That's when you're introduced with information that is diametrically opposed to a belief you hold already. So now you're faced with something that makes you very uncomfortable, because you have this belief that you live, and you've lived it. You've made decisions on it. You live your life based on it, and now here comes something challenging. Well, it creates cognitive dissonance, and one of several things have to happen. You either have to accept the new idea and commit to change, or you have to find a way to invalidate the idea so that you can go back to your comfort zone. So what most people do is dismiss the idea as being foolish, or they find a way to discredit the messenger. And when they discredit the messenger, now they can say, because that person did this, or that person did that, or because that person comes from here, because that person doesn't have this degree or that degree, any way they can find to discredit the messenger so they don't have to receive the message, then they can go back to being. But if not, they're stuck in a place of cognitive dissonance, which means it's discomfort, it's unease, it's painful. And so that's a process you got to go through when you want to change the idea that you have that is not serving you in a good way or serving your interests. You go through that process. So the simple answer to the question is, it's simple, but it's not easy, because it's going to be fought most of the way.
Right. And I think that's, well, we see that occurring a lot, what you said about discrediting the messenger. We see that on, in news media a lot. Here lately, one thing in particular that I saw, it was, what is that guy's name? I can't think of his name at the moment. But he's a Black actor in Hollywood, and I don't know if you can help me come up with his name, Rick, but he was a singer, and he's the one that has like the scar here under the face. He's from Nigeria. Yeah, Seal. So he had recently came out with he had did a video pertaining to Oprah's her acceptance speech, and the things that for those of us who heard her speech, we know that she was bringing up the Me Too awareness and things of that nature. And so he had did that video, and the next thing that we saw in the media, I don't know if you guys pay attention, was that here came some woman saying that she was had been assaulted or something by him. Now, that is another act of discrediting, because here it is, he just spoken truth about, in reality, what was going on, because what he said was that, this Me Too has been going on for years in Hollywood, and it's been kept over rug has been kept over it. Even Oprah knew about it. But what he was saying is that, nothing has been done. There hasn't been any real justice concerning, these huge, elects in Hollywood. No real justice has been done against them with regards to, their abusees. And so when he said that, immediately the next day in the media, we see Seth being accused by some white woman saying that, he did whatever. So that is an example of discrediting, just one. But we see this happening all the time. When it comes to police brutality in the media or things of that nature, we'll see it, and then, they'll discredit the individual. Well, by saying he deserved this in the case because of his past, and they'll bring up this, well, he did this and he did that. And that might not even be the case at the present moment. That might not even be the situation that had brought up, what went down between the officer and the individual. But because they're able to discredit people so easily, and because we're able to accept it so easily and run with it, then that's it. We don't ask any questions behind it or anything. And so what he just said is just, a breakdown. Go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry, we're getting feedback. But basically, what you're having is, like I mentioned this to you earlier. What you have is what's called controlling the narrative. When you can control the narrative, you control the perception.
Right.
And when you control the perception, you control the behavior. And what happens is when you look at the mediums and to be to shed light on it, any medium that can express information or be communicated through, from ad campaigns on social media communications, website sharing, television, movies, radio, music, on down the line. If it's communicating, if it has the capacity for someone to sit up and listen to it or read it, then it can be used as a propaganda channel to control the ideas and the thinking. A lot of the barriers that are created between races were actually created through propaganda campaigns. The idea of one race being superior to another, one race having certain rights while another doesn't, all of that comes through a form of propaganda from days past. Propaganda has long been since a formidable mechanism through which to control the masses. It's been used thousands of years ago to send out mechanisms. When you can get someone to believe something, whether it's true or not, their behavior will be responsive to their belief. So you control what a person believes, you control their behavior. And then when you look at the fact that 85 to 90% of all media outlets are owned by 6 different individuals in the world. And all of them have primarily the same interests. So you can see how they can be used. You can see how it's being played out in contrast with Donald Trump. Donald Trump has followers, and what you have to understand is the information varies in gravity based on the authority given to the source. So, for instance, propaganda is what a mother tells her child when he's 3, 4, or 5 growing up. One mother says, you can do anything you want. You're so awesome. You're so smart. You're so beautiful. You're so gorgeous. You're so handsome. You're so exceptional. You're gonna be great in the world. You might even name the child something. One of the greatest names I've ever heard in my time that I thought the mother did an unbelievable job was a football player I knew named Peerless Price. And his name is Peerless, meaning you have no peers. You have no equal. And so this guy was undersized, wasn't super fast, but had an awesome career in the NFL. And a lot of that has to go the way he was reared and what the images that he was given early of what he could be. Now, on the flip side of that, a mother can sit up and say, you're never going to be anything. You're stupid. You're dumb. You're just like your lazy daddy. All of the different things that some children hear. Well, the child has a choice of not believing that, and on rare occasions that doesn't happen. But because the parent has such great authority in the child's life, the parent is what's known as the primary label giver. The teacher is also a secondary primary label giver. Peers would be secondary label givers. And so what the parent says has more gravity than the peer has because the parent has more authority. Well, that simply transitions as you move through life. Who has authority in your life changes. But the information they give you is depending. With us, we give a lot of authority to celebrities and entertainers. What they say, we hang on. We ride on it. We give it a lot of validity without ever really truly examining it, questioning it. One thing I tell people all the time, question the limits. Question the limits. Question why someone says you can't do it. Question why someone says it doesn't belong to you. Don't be afraid to question what is being presented to you, because a lot of times people are presenting information to you not to benefit you, but to benefit them. Well, in that sense, that's one of the things we have to look at. So when you look at what's being fed, Donald Trump, with those people who voted him in and believe he's going to make America great again, when he sits up and says that the news are the facts that are being purported, that facts that can actually be substantiated, facts that can be researched and verified, when he sits up and says it's fake news, his people don't even go out and verify it. They say it's fake news, and what happens? Now anything reported by mainstream media, by a media outlet that hasn't been pro-Trump, is totally dismissed by his following. And that is a powerful message in and of itself. So now you have an authority figure giving greater gravity to different pieces of information that also shape the minds and the behavior of people. He's literally controlling what they do by how he's presenting information or categorizing or interpreting or identifying information that they're receiving. So now they've been told they'll get away from it. I don't want to hear nothing from CNN. I don't want to hear anything from whatever that other one is. Think of it. But that's just different ways all these things are being manipulated. But in the general scope of things, there are a lot of subtleties and subliminal suggestions. If you want to know the gravity of what's possible, and then I'll turn it back over to you. If you want to know the gravity of what's possible based on the use of media, the Super Bowl is coming up. It's the best analogy to use to talk about the power of media to influence decisions. When the Super Bowl comes, you're going to hear about these unbelievable prices that companies are going to pay for a 30-second spot on the Super Bowl, because the Super Bowl is the most watched event each year on television, period. That event has more viewers than any other event at any time around the globe during the year. So it's the #1 watched event. They will pay $2, $3, $4 million for a 30-second spot. Now, why would they invest that kind of money if it didn't have an influence? That 37-second spot, because it's going to be so amplified, not only is it information that is influencing, but it's also information that's on a great stage. So it's going to be viewed while people are in an emotional state. And that's a whole other thing that we may not get into. But the higher the emotional state you're in, the more impactful the information and the more of the information you retain when it's coming to you. When I'm doing a seminar or I'm doing a conference and I'm speaking, I keep the crowd hyped. I got hype music going. Right in the middle of something I'm doing, I'll pop off the music, get them jumping again, get them excited about something. Why? Because they're going to retain more and they're going to be more likely to take action on the things they believe will work. And that's what happens when you do an ad on the Super Bowl. People are hyped. They got money on the game. They got a bunch of people in the house. They excited. They drunk. So that they're excited. But being that most of them are drinking, they're also mentally relaxed. The more mentally relaxed you are, the more you are vulnerable to mental and informational suggestion. And so all of these things are put up and set up to work for the benefit of the people who are doing them. So if you think it doesn't work, you got to explain to me how somebody is spending $3.5 million on an ad that's going to last 30 seconds if it doesn't have an impact. It would be foolish to do that. And these are companies that are billion-dollar companies that know the market game in and out. One of the best books that I've ever read, I read it a long time ago. It was written in 1928 by a guy by the name of Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays wrote a book called Propaganda. And Propaganda lays out in great specificity, if I'm correct, Edward Bernays was the guy who ran the marketing campaign that made smoking glamorous. And for women, at one particular point in time, smoking was something that men did. Smoking was primarily something that men did. And then Edward Bernays came in with a campaign that started saying, when you smoke, you're beautiful. When you smoke, you're glamorous. They kept putting these images up of women in these unbelievable dresses and these gloves. And it was saying that, you know, when you do this, and all of a sudden you got movies now, and women are with these long white gloves on, and they're putting the cigarette up to their mouth, and they're doing all this. And next thing you know, now women are smoking at the same rate that men are. And it was all to push the increased sales and revenue of the cigarette companies. And they got in, got this person, they came in. And so what we have, another good book is by a guy by the name of Tom Burrell, who was a black guy who had one of the best marketing companies for a while. He's retired now, but he wrote a book called Brainwashed. And he talks about how the industry uses media to basically condition the minds of poor people and black and poor people to behave in ways that are not conducive to their empowerment. So that's the kind of thing you're dealing with on an ongoing basis. And that's what we're up against. And that's what we're not prepared for. Because again, we tend to view all of the channels through which propaganda is being fed as forms of entertainment and mediums and channels of entertainment. And we don't treat it seriously. We will fight to do it. We will literally criticize and attack people who bring it up. And we don't understand. It's not what your conscious mind perceives. It's what your non-conscious brain and your non-conscious mind perceives that creates the reality.
Exactly. And you touched on quite a lot there. And I don't even, you know, it's crucial. It's crucial. Everything that you said is very important. For one thing, I'm glad that you said is when it comes to the conditioning of our minds, you spoke about, you know, healing and us not necessarily being able to, you know, recognize certain things because we've been conditioned for it to look this way and this way only. So, you know, quite naturally, you know, some may not recognize, but the purpose of this broadcast is to offer healing and awareness, you know, especially to minority groups, you know, because we have no clue. Like he just said, just like he just broke down how, you know, it profits this country to keep a group of people, to keep us as Blacks and as African Americans, keep us in a lack mentality, keep us in a inferiority position because they profit off of that, and we have no idea. And so the purpose of doing this, the number one priority for doing this was to bring the awareness and to offer a sense of healing because we have no clue. So just because, you know, we have been conditioned for healing to look like this is what healing looks. You have to go to this place in order to be healed, and this is what it has to look like. That's not the case. We've been conditioned to think that way, but healing can be offered and come to you in several different avenues. It's all about you being open to receive it. And the thing about what he said is a lot of times when we see something that's different or outside what we've been conditioned to believe and to see, we'll automatically, you know, throw up the red flags or the guards, and we're not even able to receive something that might be of benefit to us. So I want you to keep that in mind as well. One of the things that you said also about, you know, keeping us in an inferior position, the fact that it's just an act of perception. You know, we had talked about this a little bit yesterday, and, you know, we went into a detailed discussion about it, and I had even posted a quote about it yesterday as well. But our reality is only an act of perception, and literally, if we changed our mindset about the way we saw ourselves with reinforcement, with, you know, the knowledge that Dr. Wallace had shared with us earlier, you know, taking that time, whether it's 30 days to, you know, replace and break some of the images and things that we have, you know, digested, right? And being able to replace that with light, being able to replace that with actual truth, being able to replace that with something positive, then you take back your power. I had said yesterday that, you know, when it comes to the things that we see in society today as African Americans, yes, boycotts, protests, all of these things are important. However, if your mind is still enslaved, what will it profit? What will it profit? And so it's very important. And like I said, we're wanting to bring awareness to you guys so that you can understand, so that you can begin to see your world differently, so that you can take back your power. That's all it is. You know, he said it's a simple act. It's a simple process. Just being able to replace what you've been told about yourself with the opposite, and being able to apply reinforcement to that, to where your subconscious now accepts it and begins to manifest that in your world. It's that simple. And something that I want to say as well, you know, for those of you who have been connected with me for some time, there was a series that I would do on Sundays, and I called it Sunday School Lessons is what I called it. And the whole purpose of that was to reinforce, or to get rid of this inferior identity. All right, because one of the things that I enjoyed about doing that is that I was able to find from our history these magnificent people, our ancestors, right? Who in this country, even in this country alone, see, we think that, you know, we're just slaves here in this country. You know, that's our beginning. We think that was our beginning, but it's not, okay? But in this country alone, we have literally built everything that we see. We built the foundation, the framework for this country, and none of us know about it. None of us know about the millions of inventions that our ancestors created, all of the patents that they have on basic things that you and I use every single day, and yet we're walking around here inferior. It's because we don't have the knowledge of that. And something else that you said is the fact that you're much more impressionable when you have a lack of knowledge. All right, your mind is much more impressionable to believe something, to believe an idea that might not be true if you lack knowledge. And so the purpose of this, and the purpose of other things that I do, is to make you aware, to bring you to feed you knowledge that will change your mind, that will change your outlook on yourself, and ultimately change your outlook on the world, and how you see yourself in it. Because we've been fed lies. We've been fed lies. And if you can, and just imagine if we all changed our mind from saying that, or in our beliefs and our behaviors and the way we go around this world, if we changed our minds and everything around it from this inferior complex, and we came to self, all right? We came to this knowledge of self, and we walked around like, no, I am superior. Okay, I know who I am. All right. There's no way that the things that we see happening in this country to us could continue. But because we don't know, we actually play a part in it, all because of the lack of knowledge. Okay, and it's crucial. It's really crucial. All right, Rick, listen, I got another question. For you. I mean, do you agree with that? Is it something that simple from, you know, us as a race being able to change our mind from this inferior complex? You know, is it that simple to, you know, gain knowledge and be able to believe in ourselves and come to know who we actually are, that the things that we seek would disappear?
Wow, that was a lot to digest. The simple answer to that is it's not that simple. There's a saying that I have that I use quite often, and when describing the situation we're in, and the dilemma when it comes to what can be done about it. And the saying simply says that facts mean absolutely nothing to the conditioned mind. And what it means is the conditioned mind has been trained to ignore anything outside of the parameters of what it's been conditioned to believe. And the only way you change a conditioned mind is to recondition it. So introducing new truths and saying, okay, I know you've been believing this for a long time, but this is really the truth, will not work, because the conditioned mind is stronger than the truth or the fact. You've got to actually bombard that mind with that fact with different ways over time until it actually starts to change the conditioning process. This is how prisoners and operatives and things of that nature are brainwashed. And that's why they come back. They have to be debriefed and I forget the term they use, but if they've been like captured, like they're a CIA operative or spy, and they get captured and held for any significant time, they have to be brought in and they're first debriefed on what they went through. Then they go through a process of reconditioning them because they've probably been conditioned to be anti-American in their thought processes. It's not something that they can avoid because it's done from a subconscious perspective. It's what's being fed to them on a subconscious level consistently over and over again that they can't avoid because they're being held, because their environment is controlled, and what they're being fed and hurt and what they're hearing is being controlled over time. It's so repetitive that they'll start to believe it. Well, that's the same thing that's happened to us. We've been conditioned to believe that we deserve this second-rate life that we live. We deserve poverty, that we are just black people are just meant to be poor. All of these different things, that we're not as smart as them. You can watch the mannerism. One of the things you mentioned when you were describing some of the disciplines that I've mastered and that I use at the Visionetics Institute is embodied cognition. Embodied cognitive conditioning is the ability to take someone's body and to change their emotional state and their mental state. And so you can tell how a person is feeling by watching their posture. Certain postures belong to certain mental states. If I'm sad, my head is hung, my shoulders are slumped. If I feel defeated or if I feel overwhelmed, I will slump. And you see that when you have one person walk into the presence of a person that they hold in a higher regard than themselves. When a person walks in and shrinks your self-esteem, it shows in your physical presentation. And so I've watched over and over again Black people around Black people with their shoulders square, their head held up, feeling pride about themselves, and a white person can walk in and immediately they shrink, not just emotionally or psychologically, but physically. And so what you have to do is you have to literally look at what there's so many different things that you've got to address. You can use that reverse. And that's what embodied cognitive conditioning is. When I help people, with everything from depression to sadness to anger, a bunch of different things, by showing them how to use their body to take control of their emotions. Because a person say, I can't control my emotions. If I'm mad, I'm mad. No, yes, you can. Yes, you can. There's an old saying that people use now, and nobody ever gives it a second thought. But back when they first started saying it, they didn't understand why it worked, but they knew it worked. And they would just simply say to somebody who was having a rough day, feeling down, depressed, hold your head up. Why? Because they found that when you held your head up, it was almost impossible to feel bad. It was almost impossible to feel sad. It was almost impossible to feel defeated and vulnerable when you squared your shoulders and held an upright position. It's because your brain interprets it. Normally, what the brain says, when I'm in this position with my head held up and my shoulders squared, normally I'm in control of things. Normally things are going pretty good when I'm like this. So if you refuse to give in and you keep that embodied posture, it will send a message to your brain and your brain will conform. It's only when you relent to the idea, okay, I'm sad. And that's another thing. We tend to adopt poor situations. We become identified with being defeated, become identified with not having. We become identified with being oppressed. We become identified with being helpless. And so that's why you see us complain more than we take action, because there's actually a chance if I complain and I'm saying I'm helpless, somebody will feel sorry for me. And so we look for the sympathy of others or the sympathy within our group of one another to get through instead of taking ownership of something. But see, again, anything that requires change requires pain. Change is not comfortable. And so to get people to go through the processes of changing, you can introduce a truth to them. Number one, that truth by itself is not going to be enough. You're going to have to consistently recondition their mind with consistently providing them with an environment that is producing information that they're taking in that is contrary and opposed to what the beliefs they've always held. And over time, it changes. You can walk in. Now, you can make someone do something, but if their mindset isn't aligned, they'll eventually find their way back to their normal behavior. If they never change who they are here, changing their behavior is not going to last. That's why you get people who lose weight for a minute and they gain it back, because they've never truly adapted to, I'm really a fit person. I'm really in shape. I'm going to lose this because if I do this, you give them the right plan, the right nutritional plan, the right workout plan, the right thing. And if they do it for a while, they get results. They'll lose the weight. But if they never truly change their mind about who they are, if they still believe in their mind that I'm an out of control eater, eventually it catches up with them. That's why they say once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, which I don't believe. I believe that you can really remap your mind. You can shift your neurological process. Receptors and create new ideas of who you are and change that. But the reason they say that is because while you may stop the behavior, it's still here. And all it takes is the right trigger and you go back to the old behavior because that's natural. You can sit up and fake being something for a while. But if you don't change here who you are is what you really are. What you're doing will eventually find what you are here. That's what psycho-cybernetics is. Cybernetics is in science. Cybernetics in science is the adjustment. In other words, the best way to describe it is your thermostat in your house. I use that as an analogy when I'm working with my people. We need to change the thermostat in your brain. The thermostat in your house, especially if you got a smart thermostat, you can set it on something, and because it's smart, it'll literally go from AC to heat without you having to flip that AC to heat switch. And so you just set the temperature. And if it gets 2 degrees hotter than the thermostat setting, the air will automatically come on. If it gets 2 degrees colder, the heat will automatically come on, and it'll stay on until it gets back to that setting. That's called cybernetics. You have cybernetics on airplanes. You set the autopilot, set the compass to where you're going, and the plane gets blown off, of course, all through your flight. You never know it. But the autopilot uses cybernetics to bring it back on and set it back on course. And you get that, and so you get back on course. Well, the same thing happens with your mind. If I believe that I am a poor eater, or that I'm not good with money, or that whatever, any limiting belief or negative belief about myself, you can get me to change my behavior. But if you never deal with what I'm thinking here, if you don't work with changing this, the behavior will always find its way back to the setting, the thermostat. Whatever my mind is set on, my behavior will eventually find it. You can change it for a minute, but it's going to find its way back. So what you have to do is actually work to change the setting, the thermostat. When you change the thermostat, you don't have to change the behavior. It'll automatically follow the setting. And so that is a process. So when I talk about what we're doing as a people, that's a huge undertaking. We don't own a lot of media outlets. We don't own a lot of informational channels and communication channels to change the information that our people are receiving on a grand scale. And so they are turning to other channels that are not going to serve their needs. These channels are set up. The programming is subliminal. I'm going to give you a prime example, then I'll turn it back over to you. A prime example is this. You may be too young. Don't ever ask a woman that, Rick. I almost went there. But, okay, not going to do that. But you may not be old enough. But I'm old enough to remember. I'm 50. I'm old enough to remember when homosexuality was, first of all, taboo, where you didn't talk about it. You had a bunch of people in the closet. Some of them were so outward with their mannerisms, you knew, but it wasn't talked about. It wasn't something that was accepted in the early 70s. And all of a sudden, there was an agenda set that says, we're going to start an agenda. to where we're going to make this mainstream. It didn't happen overnight. That was a time that the things you see on television as far as the language being used and the sexual behavior, whether it's heterosexual or homosexual, wasn't on television. But what they did, they progressed it slowly. First, it was somebody talking about it. And even then, I can remember my grandparents, oh my God. I can remember my grandparents when they would talk about it. And it was a taboo subject. It was, oh my God. And they talked about it enough until you stop even catching it. Then they stepped it up and they showed two men holding hands. And I'm gonna tell you, one of the shows they introduced it on, and they introduced it in an ingenious way. And it's some of the things we need to study, how the LGBT community was able to advance their movement in the way they did. Over 40 years, they put it to where now you say something wrong, you got a problem. And they did it in one of the shows in the 70s that totally blew it open. And it was a guy pretending to be gay. And on Three's Company, where Jack pretended to be gay so he could live with Chrissy and Janet. And you might be too young to remember that again, but it was on in the 70s, and it stayed on for a long time. And what happened was the landlord didn't allow people who weren't married and different sex to rent his place. You couldn't live with somebody who was opposite sex. So for him to get that apartment that they had a 3-bedroom apartment. One of their roommates moved out and they were looking for a roommate. He showed up, but they weren't going to let him in. And so he started playing like he was gay. Well, that started to produce behavior, even though he wasn't actually gay, but it produced behavior that became common and acceptable. And people stopped looking at it as being something negative, and it took on. And from there, they brought in somebody, this time the person, not in the same show, but in a new TV series, the person was gay. And they progressed it slowly until they got it to the point now where you got people doing sex acts on TV, and it's actually being acceptable and being defended. And that comes from a slow progression of feeding information, making what is not acceptable acceptable, making what perception. Again, we go back to, like you said, reality is simply an act of perception. It is what you perceive. And people used to argue this all the time. Perception is reality. No, reality is right. No, that's why the same thing can happen to two different people and you get two totally different outcomes. How they frame it, how they interpret it. One person has this unbelievable situation where two people have a situation where they both get molested when they're 8 years old. One person interprets it as, I'm not worthy. It's something I did. I don't know what I did, but I'm not worthy. I'm dirty. All the things that can happen if you don't deal with that situation right, and you don't have someone to come in and help you by getting you the help you need, you start to do that. And then it builds this spiral of feeling less than and not worthy of. And you go through all these different relationships of men who don't respect you, don't love you, don't protect you, don't care for you, and on and on and on. And you look up and now you've gone through drug addiction. You've gone through all this. Your life is just in shambles. You're 50 years old, have nothing to show for it. The other person saw it, immediately stood up and said, it's not my fault, told their mom, told their dad, and got the help, or just simply for whatever reason said, it's not my fault. This will never happen to me again. I'm going to tell somebody and then he's going to get in trouble and I'm going to do whatever I have to do. And then what you look up, now they're a public speaker, traveling the world, helping other people who dealt with the same thing or helping people deal with trauma. I know someone like that. Matter of fact, I'm married to one. And so, and that's the difference. So the interpretation, how did you interpret it? And that's going to determine. So what happens is, and what perception is reality means, is how you perceive it determines your behavior. If you perceive it to be a certain way, then it's reality because you're going to make decisions based on that perception. If you feel that that person that just turned that corner, if you really and truly perceive that person is about to do you harm, the chances are you're either going to run or you're going to defend yourself. And that person walks by you and gets the crap knocked out of them. And they didn't even have any idea you were there. They weren't paying you no attention. But because you perceived them as a threat, you behaved as such. That's a reality because everything that follows are the consequences of that perception. And so what you have to do is teach people how to frame the information. They can't control what comes in. They need to learn how to frame it. And that's it. I can't stress that enough. That's one of the things we focus on a lot is framing. Framing at how you perceive something is going to determine how you behave. It's going to determine your state. It's going to determine your decision making, your behavior, all of that. So it's real important to be able to properly contextualize and frame the information that you're dealing with. And again, an hour is not nearly enough to even come close to really getting to the real depth of human behavior and the influence of information. It's always information. If it's not coming from the media, it's coming from your parents, it's coming from your teachers, it's coming from your peers, it's coming from your own personal observations. And all of these things are being used to determine, first and foremost, the most important thing. How do you view yourself in the world, your self-image, your self-concept? How do you fit into the world? Are you a powerful influencer in the world? Do you have the capacity to change the things around you so that they benefit you? Or are you just existing in a world that you have no control over? That's the range of what your self-image can do for you. If you believe that you can do things, if you've been taught that the sky is the limit, that anything you set your mind to, you can do, that if you can conceive it in your mind, that's God's evidence that it's possible, all these wonderful things. And it's been, like you said, you've been encouraged to use your imagination to come up with crazy ideas and then go make them happen. Then the world can't combine you. It can't box you in. No matter how much it wants to, it can't use you to its benefit without benefiting you. It has to bring a fair exchange to the table to get anything out of you because you are taking control of your life. But when you don't have control of your life, when some other information or some other person has written the narrative for you, then you're at the mercy of the person who wrote the narrative and all others who come along and realize you're operating by that narrative. There are people who will come along that didn't write the narrative, but are able to see you're operating based on the confines and the constructs of the narrative, and they will take advantage of you. That's the guy that comes along and realizes you got daddy issues and exploits it. He didn't cause the problem, but he immediately sees the weakness and he takes a shot at it. And so that's what we're up against. We're up against a well-oiled machine, generations of conditioning to where parents are now conditioning the children on behalf of the oppressor.
Right.
And so it's a lot to work with.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the, what you had brought up concerning the agenda setting of homosexuality, when you said that, you know, back during your time, you know, it was taboo, but they built it up slowly. And I had just saw earlier today something to where I believe now gay history is going to be mandatory in public schools, you know, and it's like, wow, you know, how did they earn history, you know, how did this happen? You know, how are they able to get history before Native Americans, Indigenous people, African Americans here in this country? And, you know, like you said, you would like to know how they were able to, you know, literally, if anything is said ill against them, then, you know, everything is shut down. Literally, everything is shut down. And so, you know, it just goes with that whole idea of, you know, introducing something to you repetitively, you know, and then your mind starts to change about it. So yeah, it might have been taboo then, but you keep seeing this in the media, you know, things are being said about it. So, you know, now it's warming you over and making you think or see differently about it. So here it is now, you know, gay history is going to be mandatory in public schools. And, you know, there are some people that are, you know, in an uproar about it, of course, and some people who just love the idea, but probably, you know, people who in earlier times felt some type of way about it before and now have changed their mindset about it because it's been reintroduced to them several different times. And also with this agenda, here's something I want to share, because like you said, it's so much that we could talk about, but we don't have the time to. But this, and I don't know if you guys are able to see this photo here, but here we have Taye Diggs. Now he's going to be doing a show in Las Vegas, and here it is. You see all of this makeup and lipstick on this face, on this strong black man, right? When you perceive Ty Diggs, you see him as this strong black man, and then here it is. He has all this mascara, eyeliner, and lipstick on him, and that just again reinforces this agenda of homosexuality that is being set or has been set in this country.
That goes, I've written on this numerous occasions. That goes much deeper than promoting homosexuality. That's the constant and consistent effort to feminize the black male image.
Exactly.
To take away the masculinity of the black male image, which takes away the power of the black man and takes away the trust in the black man. I said all the times, while you'll get plenty of black women who have no problem with being buddies and friends with guys who are gay, you'll never find black women following the lead in a social setting or a community setting of those same guys. They'll be your buddies, they'll laugh and kick it up with you, but they want a strong, black, masculine man to follow. It's the natural yearning of the inner part of women. And so when you are able to emasculate the image, and see, you can emasculate the image without homosexualizing the image. And you use a number of different things. And what you find is that's what got the big issue a while back when Dave Chappelle walked away from that big contract. I think it was with HBO because they kept trying to put him in a dress. But go back and think. You got Eddie Murphy in a dress. You got Martin Lawrence in a dress. You got Wesley Snipes in a dress, Ving Rhames in a dress. You can go on down the line. The only people I can think about that didn't do it, while Will Smith has never been in a dress, the first movie he ever made was 6 Degrees of Separation, which was him as a gay person. So again, you emasculize those people. Why? Because because we are people who are vicarious in nature, because where we exist in this world, there are not a lot of us who have power. There's not a lot of us who experience success at an immensely high level. So we tend to live our lives vicariously through celebrities. So we give a lot of gravity, weight, and authority to celebrities. So when you're able to take the people that black people, especially black boys, are looking up to, you put LeBron James in a dress. You put Larry Johnson, another great NBA player back in another era, in a dress, grandmama. And then you sit up and you put them out there and you say it's just entertainment or it's just a picture. No, what you're doing is you're taking a masculine, strong man with a platform to present his manhood, and you emasculate it. You give him a feminine imagery that is perceived in the black psyche and inculcated into the black psyche, and the black male image as a whole is lessened. It's a slow, steady process that's been done over years. And that's why they were so emphatic about Chappelle doing it, because he was on the rise and a lot of people was looking at him. He walked away from it and moved out the freaking country. And for a while, and then he comes back. And so when you look at Taye Diggs, this is actually Taye Diggs taking a show that's been in New York on Broadway for 2 years. And now he's taking it to Vegas. When I first caught it 2 years ago, I wrote an article on it that's on the Odyssey Project site, and I talked about the whole thing. It's not even about homosexuality. All I need to do is feminize something that should be masculine, and I create an imbalance, and that's just one more way that this information is being used to work against us. And so it's crazy that you actually brought that up. That picture is on my website, one of my websites, and I addressed it, and that has massive impact. Think about it. Look at your rappers nowadays. Back when I came up and rap was really first hitting, the guy who was the epitome of rap in the 80s, who basically was a part of what put rap on the map, was LL Cool J. And he was the man's man. Matter of fact, his name stands for Ladies Love Cool J. So he was this guy always walking around with his shirt off, doing this, doing that, and all that stuff like that. And then you go through this process of other rappers who came along. They were hard. You had NWA. You had all these groups who recognized they represented some form of the black man. And you have to understand where hip hop came from. Hip hop was the answer to the FBI's COINTELPRO shutting down the Black Liberation Army, the Black Panther Party. And then that was a void because those were the places people were getting their identity from. Hip hop came as a culture, not just as music, but as a culture that brought in poetry, music, dress, an entire new vernacular. For instance, the word dope meant awesome and great and cool. Bad meant good. All these different things that we use to communicate to ourselves that they couldn't interpret allowed us to actually advance ourselves. When they saw that we were using that music that they said wouldn't last as a means of empowering ourselves, you had the X Clan, you had Boogie Down Production, with KRS-One, you had all these groups coming in spitting mad, crazy knowledge. And now you got them talking about self-destruction, stop the violence. Whoa, wait a minute, hold on. They upsetting what we got. We got to take it over. So then here comes the big record companies. And over time, they eased in, took it over, and now they're sitting up and controlling the content that's coming through the radio. Now you got these kids that are disrespecting women way worse than it's been done. It's always been an issue. Misogyny has always been an issue because we don't respect the women in our culture. But it's gotten way worse. They're talking about Percocets, lean, getting high, disrespecting women and killing folks. And when you can understand. And then now they're walking around in dresses. They're walking around talking about doing sexual acts with other males. And it's all part of, again, of the feminization of the male image or the ostracization of males in the way that they're being presented. The same thing you can talk about. I'm going to give it back to you. I know we need to wind down, but for instance, like I say, they control the narrative. I saw two identical situations where three cats went into a mall and took some stuff and ran out, got caught. Their pictures were their mug shots. When it hit the news, it was their mug shots. And when there were another situation, maybe 3 months later, where 3 or 4 white boys went off into the mall and actually did a lot more damage, took a lot more stuff, and created more havoc. And they showed their graduation pictures. It's the image that's being written, it's the narrative that's been written. And you see this over and over again of this perception of Black men and being violent, being dumb, being aggressive, being thieves and criminals. And it's automatically expected. That's why the little white lady walking into the Walmart gets all the way to the other side when she sees a Black man coming, because that image has been constantly bombarded on the television set. All Black men are dangerous. That's why I'm saying this, I'm done. That's why cops shoot Black men that are unarmed and say, I fear for my life. It's people that say, that's just something they're saying. There's a book written by a former police chief named Norm Stamper, who was the police chief in San Diego and Seattle. The book is called Breaking Rank. Breaking rank is a term used when you are with a group of people like police stick together. That's called a rank and file. Everybody's going to stick in. Everybody's going to tell the same story. Nobody's going to snitch on anybody. Breaking rank is the person who comes out of that and says, this is what's really happening. And that's what Norm Stamper did in his book. He broke rank and he told. And one of the things he says in this book that totally blew my mind and made me look at things differently. It's been a while since it was written, but it made me look at things differently. He says that one thing that white police officers, almost to a man, struggle with, while they will never admit it, is the fear of Black men. He says they have a natural, innate fear of Black men, and the bigger and blacker he is, the more scared they are of it. And so when they say they believe that Black men have supernatural power and have the ability to destroy and kill them with their hands, because that's the image that's consistently portrayed. Now, while we are more physically equipped and athletically endowed, and normally in most situations will be stronger, quicker, faster, by no means do we, in any normal situation, pose a life threatening situation to them for them to shoot us, but they are that afraid. And then you have to kind of think of the mindset of the type of person that ends up being a cop. And we won't get into that. But you have to, you have to really look at the entire construct. And I mean, you got so many different things that are being said. And now we have our babies who are watching these things and getting these inferiority complexes. And now we have a high rate of teen and prepubescent suicide in the Black community.
Yeah.
It's on the rise. And that's because when you don't know who you are, when you are buying the label of someone else, when someone else's opinion of you matters more than your opinion of yourself, or shapes your opinion of yourself to the point to where you feel it's nothing worth sticking around for. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing in your environment that helps you change that idea. That's a problem. And so there are so many different ways to create genocide. Obviously, there's the physical way, but the more subtle way is to create mental genocide, where people simply destroy themselves from the inside out. And that's what we're dealing with.
Absolutely. So we're going to actually go ahead and wind down now, but I appreciate so much what you have shared with us this evening. Like you said, it's just so many ways in which we are being impacted that it will require, more than 3 nights to just lay it all out. However, I hope that, you all, and I believe you will, take some of this with you and begin to look at things differently in your life. We put this together so that you could, one, learn how the mind works. We broke it down, as simple as possible so that, you can then begin to understand, that principle and then apply it to your life so that you're able to, manifest these goals, these visions and things that are important to you. Okay. And not just that area, but also to be able to understand and have a, increased awareness and how media, affects all of us as individuals. There's so many messaging and so many things that are going on, and it's just like that. And, like we said, when you don't have knowledge, or framework in terms of what it is that media is capable of doing and how your mind works, then you can be easily manipulated. So we're hoping that you can take this and be able to shine a light now, at certain things that you see and research, research. Just don't take, our word, even though he is very well, educated on these things. Always do your research. It's important to do it for yourself and not just take what somebody's feeding you. Don't just digest, everything that is coming through, these different mediums. I hope that, again, that you were able to pull something away from this. I don't see any questions in the comment section. I did say that we would address those at the end, but I don't see any comments. If you watch the replay of this and you have a question, feel free to then type it in the comment section, and Rick or myself will be glad to address that for you. Also, I will put a short poll together for those of you who have been participating and who have been tuned in. Really appreciate it if you would fill that out just to let us know, how helpful this was for you, and if this is something that you would like to see more of. Because as he said, it's not the one time that information or new truth is introduced to you, but it's the repetition of it. And we would like to be, as helpful, as accessible, to you guys if it is something that is helpful, which I believe it is. So we really appreciate you doing the poll. Rick, can you tell people where they can find you, how they can stay connected with you?
Okay, for those of you who are looking to maybe advance yourself in this current state or situation or place you're in at this current moment, you can visit me at rickwallacephd.link, Link. Definitely check out the upcoming book, which is my 20th book, Critical Mass. If you're focusing in on this from an Afrocentric perspective, then I would tell you to go to www.theodysseyproject21.top. Also, if you want this laid out for you from an Afrocentric perspective, from a scientific perspective, you can get my 19th book, which is Born in Captivity, Psychopathology as a Legacy of Slavery. You can actually get the book by ordering it on the Odyssey Project site under the Born in Captivity tab. You can also get it at Barnes & Noble, Sony Books, Amazon. It's distributed through all the major distribution channels. But this lays out in great detail a lot of the things that we're dealing with psychologically as a legacy of slavery, and some of the mechanisms being used by a racial caste system to control how we behave and where we're at. It's not by accident. We're not here by accident. It's a construct, and the problem is, it was said by Dr. Umar Johnson that white supremacy racism is absolutely nothing without Black compliance, and I 100% agree with that. It is the compliance of Blacks that makes the power system work. The moment that we resist it, the moment that we stand up to it, the moment that we take on our own identity, at that particular point in time, things change because we start to live in who we are. We start to work and operate in the faith and the belief of who we are, and things change. So I definitely appreciate you allowing me to come on, and hopefully we'll get together and do some other things in the future.
Yes, absolutely. I appreciate you as well. All right, folks, we are out of here. Y'all have a good day tomorrow and a fabulous weekend. Peace.